LaserDisc. Long before anyone burned a CD, movies came on a disc the size of a vinyl record. Philips and MCA introduced it in 1978, storing video as an analog signal on a shiny 12-inch platter, read by a laser instead of a needle. The picture quality blew VHS out of the water. Sharper, cleaner, with none of the tape wear that came from rewinding a movie 100 times. It never caught on with regular households, though. The players were expensive. Most discs held only an hour of video per side, and you had to flip them halfway through a movie. Collectors and film buffs loved it. Everyone else waited for something smaller. CDDA, audio CD. Philips and Sony didn't just want a smaller LaserDisc, they wanted to kill the cassette tape entirely. In 1982, they launched the format properly known as CDDA, standing for digital audio, and it changed the rule everyone had lived with for decades. Music was no longer a physical groove or a strip of magnetic tape. It was pure digital data. Over 700 megabytes of it, read by a laser that never touched the disc at all. No hiss, no wear, no rewinding. Skip to any track instantly. It's the format that taught the entire world what digital sound even meant. And every disc format that came after it, CD-ROM, DVD, even Blu-ray, borrowed its exact physical size. CD-ROM. Once people realized a laser could read digital audio, someone asked an obvious question. Why stop at music? CD-ROM took the exact same disc and filled it with data instead of songs. Software, encyclopedias, early video games, entire libraries of information that used to need dozens of floppy disks. Same 700 megabytes, same laser, completely different job. The ROM stood for read-only memory, meaning whatever was pressed onto the disk at the factory was permanent. You could read it, but never change it. Through the 1990s, this became the format that shipped almost every piece of software you owned, right up until installing something meant put the CD in the drive by default. CDR. CD-ROMs were permanent because they got pressed at a factory. But what if you wanted to make your own? CDR answered that in 1988, using a thin layer of dye instead of the reflective pits stamped into a regular CD. A laser inside your own burner heats that dye at precise points, physically changing it so a player reads those spots as data, exactly like the real thing. Once burned, it's done. There's no erasing a CDR, no starting over, just a permanent copy sitting on a disc you made yourself. For the first time, anyone with a computer and a blank disc could make their own CDR-OM, or burn their own mixtape without needing a cassette at all. CDR-W. CDR gave you one shot. CDR-W gave you unlimited ones. Instead of a die that changes permanently, it uses a special alloy that can flip between a crystalline and an amorphous state, and a laser can switch it back and forth as many as 1,000 times. Burn it, erase it, burn something new. The same disc handles all of it. That flexibility came with a catch, though. Older CD players built only for regular CDs, and CDRs often couldn't read the dimmer reflection a CDR-W produces. It became less a music format and more a backup one. The disc people used to shuffle files back and forth before USB drives made the whole idea disappear. Video CD, VCD. In most of the West, this format barely made a dent. In Asia, an entire generation grew up on it. VCD packed compressed video onto a standard CD using MPEG-1, the same compression family that would later spawn the MP3. Picture quality sat somewhere below VHS, closer to a slightly blurry TV broadcast, and a single movie usually needed 2 discs just to fit. None of that mattered in markets like China, Indonesia, or the Philippines, where VCD players were cheap enough to reach households DVD never touched in time. It became the format that brought home movies to people VHS and LaserDisc had priced out entirely, a bridge technology the rest of the world simply skipped past. Enhanced CD or CD plus G. Some discs wanted to do 2 jobs at once. Enhanced CD split a single disc into separate sections, one playable as regular music in any CD player, another holding data like music videos, liner notes, or bonus software that only unlocked when the disc went into a computer. CD plus G took a stranger route, hiding graphics data inside the same channels normally used for a CD's subcode information, invisible to a music player, but readable by the right hardware, as scrolling lyrics on a screen. It's the format quietly running behind almost every karaoke machine you've ever sung into. Neither version changed the disc itself. They just found empty space nobody else was using and filled it. MiniDisc. Sony had a real shot at replacing the cassette with this one. Launched in 1992, MiniDisc shrank everything down into a 2.5-inch disc sealed inside a hard plastic shell, closer to a tiny floppy disk than a CD. It used magneto-optical recording, a laser and a magnet working together to let you record over the same disc thousands of times, something a regular CDR could never do. Sound quality came close to CD. Portability crushed it, and skipping tracks was instant instead of the fast-forward wait everyone hated. It found a real following in Japan and among musicians for over a decade. Everywhere else, it arrived just as MP3 players started making any physical disc feel unnecessary. DVD video or DVD-ROM. CDs ran out of room the moment movies needed to fit on one disc. DVD solved that in 1995 by packing far more data into the same 12cm size, up to 4.7 gigabytes on a single layer, nearly 7 times what a CD could hold. DVD video used that space for full movies with menus, subtitles, and multiple audio tracks, finally replacing VHS as the default way to own a film at home. DVD-ROM was the exact same disc doing the CD-ROM job instead, now holding entire PC games and software installers that used to need a stack of CDs. One format, 2 jobs, and enough extra room that neither one felt cramped anymore. DVD-R versus DVD plus R. 2 nearly identical formats, backed by 2 competing groups, arrived at almost the same time, and the difference between them barely mattered to anyone except the engineers who built them. DVD-R came first, developed by Pioneer and adopted by the DVD Forum, the same group that standardized DVD itself. DVD plus R followed soon after, pushed by Sony and Philips, who wanted better error correction and wouldn't wait for the forum's approval. Burn speed, compatibility, and reliability differed slightly, but only enough to matter to people burning hundreds of discs a week. Everyone else just bought whichever one was cheaper that day. It's the format war most people never even noticed was happening. DVD-RW and DVD-RAM. If DVD-R was the right once disc, this pair answered the same question CD-RW already had. What if you needed to erase it? DVD-RW worked almost exactly like CD-RW scaled up, using that same crystalline to amorphous switch to let you rewrite a disc around 1,000 times, playable in most standard DVD drives. DVD-RAM took a stranger path entirely, borrowing more from a hard drive than a DVD, data written in sectors that could be rewritten individually, without erasing the whole disc first, and rated for closer to 100,000 rewrites. That reliability made it a favorite for camcorders and computer backups, even though its odd format meant plenty of regular DVD players couldn't read it at all. Dual-layer DVD. A single-layer DVD topped out at 4.7 gigabytes, and for longer movies, that space ran out fast. Dual-layer DVD solved it without making the disc any bigger. It added a second semi-transparent recording layer sitting just behind the first one, nearly doubling capacity to about 8.5 gigabytes on the exact same 12cm disc. A DVD player's laser simply refocuses partway through, shifting from the first layer to the second, which is exactly why some movies have that brief pause or flicker right in the middle. It became the format behind almost every DVD movie with special features, commentary tracks, and multiple language options packed onto one single disc instead of 2. SACD versus DVD audio. 2 formats, 1 goal: finally give audiophiles something better than a regular CD, and neither one actually won. SACD, backed by Sony and Philips, used a completely different encoding method called direct stream digital, capturing far more detail than a standard CD and supporting multi-channel surround sound for music. DVD audio, pushed by the DVD Forum, used a more conventional approach, but crammed in even higher resolution and longer runtimes by borrowing DVD's extra storage space. Both sounded genuinely better. Both needed special players almost nobody owned, and regular CDs were already good enough for everyone except the audiophiles the formats were built for. The war ended with barely anyone noticing there'd been a war at all. UMD. Sony wanted a disc small enough for a handheld console, So in 2004, they built one specifically for the PSP and nothing else. UMD stood for Universal Media Disc, shrinking everything down to about 6 centimeters and sealing it inside a plastic caddy, closer to a tiny cassette than an open disc like a DVD. It held roughly 1.8 gigabytes, enough for a full PSP game, and Sony even sold movies on the format, betting people would want to watch films on a handheld screen. Load times were slow, the caddy made it fragile in a pocket, and by the time PSP sales peaked, digital downloads were already creeping in. It never left the PSP. When that console faded, UMD simply disappeared with it. CD-ROM. Sega had a piracy problem, and this format was built specifically to solve it. CD-ROM stood for Gigabyte Disc, a proprietary format Sega built for the Dreamcast in 1999, using a denser data track than a regular CD to squeeze about 1.2 gigabytes onto the same size disc. That extra density meant a normal CD burner couldn't copy one, at least for a while. Exactly the point, since Sega had watched the Saturn's library get pirated relentlessly using ordinary CDRs. The format worked, right up until hobbyists cracked it years later anyway. It never appeared on any other console, and when the Dreamcast was discontinued in 2001, CD-ROM went into retirement alongside it. HD DVD versus Blu-ray. 2 studios worth of backing, 2 incompatible formats, and only room in the market for one. HD DVD came from Toshiba, built on familiar DVD manufacturing that kept costs low, while Blu-ray came from Sony, packing more storage using a shorter wavelength blue laser the format took its name from. Studios picked sides. Warner and Paramount leaned HD DVD, while Disney and Fox backed Blu-ray, splitting shelves in every store selling both. The tipping point came in 2008, when Warner switched exclusively to Blu-ray and Toshiba discontinued HD DVD within weeks. It's the last true format war fought over physical media, and one side simply stopped showing up. Blu-ray. The winner of that format war turned out to have its own family underneath it, mirroring exactly what happened with DVD years earlier. BD-ROM is the pressed, read-only version, movies and games manufactured at a factory, holding up to 25 gigabytes on a single layer, more than 5 times a standard DVD. BDR lets you burn your own disc once, permanently, the same write-once idea as a CDR or DVD-R just scaled up to Blu-ray's capacity. BDRE rounds it out as the rewritable version, erasable and reusable the way a DVD-RW always was. 3 different jobs, 1 shared foundation, a blue laser, and far more room than any disc before it ever offered. Ultra HD Blu-ray. Regular Blu-ray was built for 1080 Ti, and then 4K television showed up needing far more data than that format could hold. Ultra HD Blu-ray answered in 2016 by adding a 3rd layer to the disc, pushing capacity up to 100 gigabytes. Enough room for genuine 4K resolution alongside HDR color and wider contrast than any disc before it. It needed an entirely new kind of player to read it, since older Blu-ray hardware simply couldn't handle the extra layer or the new encoding. It arrived at an awkward moment, though. 4K streaming was already spreading fast, and plenty of viewers who'd have bought the format years earlier had already stopped buying discs at all.